The Underground, Ideas into Action presents an Underground Chat, where we bring the underground conversation to you. Today's chat, A Greater Disruption, with George Ombado, CEO of ACOSCA.
You know, how is your family and how's the credit union community? What overall, how are you guys doing with the pandemic and what's taking place?
Thank you for this opportunity to be under this particular session on the things we're looking for, the purpose and what you do for the credit unions. In Africa, we normally like saying your family is actually your credit union. We have this typical slogan that is when you at the stage or when you meet your colleagues, you say credit union, you talk about happy family. And in the essence, it doesn't mean like we're always happy. It means that as a family, you always just have to, at times, agree to disagree. At the same time, when you are having challenges, you find a way of helping each other. So from where I'm coming from with African Confederation of Cooperatives, ACOSCA, one of the things that we've seen in the continent, the pandemic is causing a huge havoc to our membership. For me, more of in terms of the economic side than the health. I know you've had in the US and elsewhere that the health side is hit more, but for us, we consider these more economical. For instance, you might consider what WHO, World Health Organization, normally has said, the latest report that they issued, they say Africa region has a high share of global malaria, probably above 90%. And on an annual basis, almost over 400 million people die because of malaria. So when you look at those numbers, and those numbers are in Africa, that tells you how perhaps people are treating COVID-19. It's not that it is not painful. It is painful, but I think over time we've had series of being knocked down, from floods to droughts. Imagine if you're in the 21st century and you can stay 2 days without having a meal, or having only one kind of meal like carbohydrate each and every single day. I know, having come to Kenya or Africa before going to the World Council Busia of Orphanage projects, I know you've seen how this translates. That the way we feel as a family in this space, when you're hit by this kind of disruption, perhaps people will feel we experience this every day. That's the biggest challenge on what I'm seeing in the continent.
It's astounding to me that, as globally connected as we are, how unprepared many of us are to understand that the place between us being safe and having clean water and having access to food widens. It just continues to widen around the world. But I have been to to the orphanage and met Stella, and was adopted into the Kenyan people, and you are a family. In fact, I think that it'll be funny to think about this, but they actually said that I was now a Kenyan woman, and that my husband could take a second wife. And he said, I looked at him and I went, and he says, no, thank you very much, but one's enough. So the people they definitely are, it's part of a family. And I think that for those of us that have had the connection, I love that saying. So you're dealing with, we're dealing with the idea that we are kind of all in this together, and it may not be something as traumatic, if you will, because they unfortunately have been dealing with it. But Americans and Africans, I think about, once we have met, we become part of that credit union family together. Have you noticed that as well?
Absolutely. And again, just probably to link what you're mentioning about water. I mean, at times when we come to America and we see that you're able to drink water right from the tap, and you see that not most people in Africa have that kind of privilege, where well, I consider that privilege, because in the world, 7 out of 10 people do not have access to clean water. And you can see right on the road where people are able to, where the cattle are drinking, that's the same place that they're washing their clothes, the same place that probably they're also using the water to drink. So it's good to stress that is a huge challenge in some parts of the continent. But when you look at the impact of COVID, as much as I've said, it's a health issue which has turned to economical. There's a connection between Africa and America in various ways. The fact that we've been working together towards supporting the credit union, more of a family kind of thing. But when you look at today, the people that have lost jobs out of COVID, Africa is a continent that previously was, in the last 2 decades actually, we've been seeing huge progress in terms of GDP growth. Unfortunately, it has not been inclusive, but I like the connection that we have between ourselves and America as a family, because when I come to America, I go to a credit union, I see a financial institution of choice where everything else is available within that particular structure. I kind of see inclusion. You might not see it that way, but I see that almost everybody has that equal chance. There are other challenges that we could be facing in terms of the same, but for me, I'm seeing that more connection. And when you look at it at a bigger approach, particularly when I look at ACOSCA having gotten established in 1968, you might not be aware about this, but it was actually established by CUNA. There used to be a department called International Department within CUNA, and that established ACOSCA and ACU, our counterparts in Asia, where Nelly works for, my counterpart. So I remember if I read their history, we used to have maybe at any given point 2 or 3 full-time staff from America to help us in terms of building the credit union system in the continent. So there's a good connection right from the origin of ACOSCA.
Now, was that country or continent-wide? Was it countrywide? How did, I wasn't aware of that, so I appreciate the history. And was that a precursor to what became World Council?
Actually, for my understanding is in around 64, 65, 67, we used to have staff members of CUNA. We even have the names. I remember one, Daily. And one of the things that they were doing, because ACOSCA was established, they helped support the establishment of ACOSCA. And originally it was going to be established in Accra, Ghana, but the continent leaders decided that this gets be established in Nairobi because of the location and the easy outreach and the connectivity. And for a couple of maybe 10 years, from 1968 to 78, 79, at any given year, we used to have 2 or 3 staff members of CUNA. And that helped us because we had almost 27 African countries represented in ACOSCA, 28 at that time, from Liberia, Ghana, Cameroon, Uganda, South Africa. So that was a key point to show that if America can consider a credit union as a model to support financial access and empower people, why not a developing continent like Africa?
That's fascinating. I've been talking to Dr. Branch, about what today has been called or is being called the DEI initiative. The conversations we've been having is World Council celebrated its 50th year next year. And when you think about the impact that they've had in, from a continent standpoint, from a, individual country standpoint, and that inclusion that's been going on for a long time, Americans and the U.S. system has helped to support that and created, incredible associations. So, how many countries do you reach today now?
At the moment, we are 18, and I think it's important that I point out that in the early 90s, ACOSCA went down in 1992, and I know World Council was actually, CUNA was basically working through the World Council. So the international arm was what we call now World Council in our thinking. And World Council really supported ACOSCA during that time, the continent. But the reality is, in the 80s and early 90s, when I look at the system, we were not so good in governance practices. We were not so good in understanding the need to respect the resources that have been availed to us. We are not so good to see that inclusivity was a model that was originally thought of. I point it on the leadership that followed after the establishment of ACOSCA. We became not reckless, but we stopped focusing on the real mission of the credit union, and we started doing our own thing. And that's why, for me, I'm always grateful for Dr. Branch when at the revival of ACOSCA in 2007, and when I came in, I've been having candid conversation with Dr. Bran, and he's been very supportive when we point the areas that we think are key to our success, key to stimulate our success, from governance to supporting our regulatory issues. Actually, the interesting thing is, while in America, regulators might not be too close to the associations or the league, in Africa, when we had the revival, one of the things that my team, we had the vision, and the board of ACOSCA is to see the establishment of regulatory framework across the continent. And we've been championing that. That because there were, in terms of good governance practices, there were huge gaps. So we tried to address that. And when it comes to even issues regarding the generational issues, the youth gaps, this can happen in both sides. I've attended the Government Affairs Conference in Washington, D.C. I've attended numerous World Council sessions. What you're still able to see, there's a certain age of people who attend those meetings, but credit to World Council for bringing up the Y Cup. And you're seeing more of excitement of young people, is seeing that this model is actually the model that can benefit us. And I think for the continent, through this kind of partnership is when we are trying to build that up. We just recently established the African Youth Network, and the first country to do that, to have the national one, was Malawi. And again, this is why I'm saying we have a very good connection between American system and African system because of the partnership in terms of the leadership.
It's true, and I've seen it firsthand, and I find that there are a few things there that I want to just kind of follow up on. One is the governance. One of the, I think, eventful points in my traveling and working with projects, Brian Branch has given me the opportunity to volunteer, and I've seen from project level to actually visiting different locations and doing education, and that governance model, the Pearls model, as it was once called, but the uniformity for accounting, the idea of standardizing the way credit unions are run, and then being able to build the political support because of that governance, I think has been a critical framework for not only the World Council in what it does, but I think to collectively increase the prestige of credit unions. So the confidence in credit unions. It sounds to me like that's what you went through as well, is a little bit of that governance. What does this mean?
Yeah, actually, the advantage that we had is we went, well, why we'll use the PALs to support our structures, and we've continuously used those ratios to show the viability of a credit union. I know the challenge that at times we have is people feeling that might not be important, but when they see the good credit union, the successful credit union, are able to show why they're successful using those indicators, it makes the credit union model looks uniquely better. It makes credit union model looks more attractive in terms of sustainability. The second thing in regard to PALS too, or other initiatives that we've had, is some time back when people are talking about credit union, they were looking at today. You're looking at, I want to get involved in credit union to get financial facility. But the model that Africans have eventually adopted is a model that encourages the saving habit first, particularly the Eastern and Southern Africa, the encouraging people, which is different from microfinance, encouraging people to save, and through what they've saved is what then they're able to borrow. And I know over time that the model is changing, but the actual purpose of the credit union is not changing. For instance, one big thing that is changing within the continent, we are used to doing share-based lending, where I save $100, and when I want to borrow 400, I'm able to borrow 300 because it's 100 times 3, and we look for guarantors. But because of the relationship we've had with educative forums, like what World Council is providing, what GSA is providing, and ACOSCA comes in, we benchmark and borrow that. We've now changed, and we are trying to expose the credit union in the continent the need to lend based on capacity to pay. Which I think that makes American credit union special too, just like others. Somebody is able to borrow money not just because of the saving, but the capacity to pay because of collateral. We have a disadvantage that if a young person wants to borrow, one, they might not have a collateral, so they will never have an opportunity to borrow. When maybe a woman wants to borrow, in some places, they don't have collateral because culturally, they might not be permitted to have a collateral. So already we are starting at a different level. So this gives us an opportunity to share the best practices. And that's why, for me, I like the connection that we are having. We've had lots of cross-learning between Africa and America in that regard.
Well, and so you mentioned the YP program and the YCUP program. You've also been converted in terms of your support of the sister societies and the Global Women's Leadership Network and your full engagement. And I say converted from the standpoint of understanding the need, if you will, to focus on a segment and to empower the women around you to really build something special. So I have to commend you. Thank you very much. And I see the growth just amazing, what's happening throughout the continent. Any observations there?
Yeah, for me, I'll say that this has been a joint effort. When we started the initiative, because gender equality, I know it's one of the SDGs, but it's one of the key agendas within ACOSCA. When we started this conversation in our forums, I remember one or two of the forums, the leaders said, George, you're taking ACOSCA in the wrong directions. Probably these are not the things we should discuss. We should be talking about ratios. We should be talking about how to engage with the regulator. But I always felt compelled that when we talk about gender equality, we are doing so not because just because it makes business sense, but I think it's the right thing to do. I like using this African phrase that I am because we are. I
I
cannot
am
be,
because we are.
we
Okay.
are. I cannot be a person just because I'm from one gender. For us to be human beings in this planet, we all have to be together. Both sides have to feel the need to do the role that they have to play a role in. And that doesn't mean culturally things that were being done 50 years is bad. At that time, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, because I'm treating culture as a way of doing things, they were doing things in certain ways. That's why when you went to Busia, the first thing somebody was telling you that, oh, it's good to get somebody to join you, and perhaps maybe as a gift to your husband in quotes to think that that is good, but because culturally they feel if a good man is there, then you should have many people to take care of that man. But that is culture. It doesn't mean it is bad, but culturally that has been the way they're doing things. So our role is to, particularly the men, because I noticed that the more men talk about gender equality, the more it becomes acceptable in the continent. But the more women are talking, people end up saying, oh, this is a women thing, which is not the truth. The issue, it is the thing for the world. It is an
But
issue that should be embraced in the world.
well, I 100% agree with you, and as you know, a very important component of the Global Women's Leadership Network is the he for she's, because it was important to me, even in the founding efforts when we were talking about the initiative, that what we're talking about is education, and what we're talking about is awareness and knowledge, and I thank you so much for the cultural side of it, because we really are talking about frameworks that are in place that we need to understand. It's not about just rising, it's about all of us rising together. And with the genders working together to achieve something that's better for the family, that's better for the community, that's better for the humanity of our citizenship as we move forward. That is the goal. And so I think when we, you're right, it's very easy to put things in a gender box, well, it's women or it's men or it's this. No, I mean, we really are, if we're going to make a difference, we have to understand each other. We have to listen. We have to build up from the grassroots. And that's what's happened with your sister society growth in Africa, is we're seeing people, and I just said this to a group of leaders this week, that the more you have a collective group, the more your voice is going to be heard on issues that are important. And we have to be careful to not go into issues that are just white noise. They're issues that will take us away from our core purpose. And so I'm constantly coming back to, here's the strategic purpose. It's to advance women in society to be able to impact their credit unions and their communities. So, and their, obviously people. So it's interesting, and you are
Absolutely.
a big supporter, and we're very, very
Mm,
proud of
mm,
Monica and the women that are just out there making a difference. So we're going to be talking to you more
mm,
about that too. But
yeah.
thank you for that.
I know for us, we really appreciate the Global Women Leadership Network Program and many other initiatives that are within the continent, because one of the things that we've observed is about improved level of confidence among those who also go through the program. Because at times when you see the women that are able to step up to become leaders, they either just lack of confidence or somebody just telling them, yes, the culture is it's there, but we as men, we are behind you in this case. Last year when we had our annual meeting, the SACA Congress, when we had the African Women Network, which is more combining the sister society, the way we've done the framework is such that the sister societies, we want them to be as many as possible in the continent to the African Women Network and the Global Women Leadership Network. And we are using the board members to continuously talk about that. The challenges are still there. I mean, it's there to the extent that at times women who perhaps qualify do not want to step in front to be given leadership position or to be elected just because they feel it is too hard or it is too political. But with more empowerment, I think that will help. But the paradox are in Africa for me around gender equality, which is significant because it's one of the SDGs, 17 SDGs by the UN, is you look at the people who save most in the continent, and it could be the same in US, but in Africa, the people who save most, be it Kenya, be it Malawi, be it Ghana, ironically, it is the women.
To speak to the confidence issue, I have been honored to have conversations when we get together, at least on an annual basis, and I've had stories where women have come up to me and we've talked about what's taking place. And one of the most prevalent conversations we have is the confidence to enter into the conversations, the confidence to be able to talk to their partners and talk about why this is important rather than it just being a gender issue. So you're right, every step is a step. And as you know, we are not anywhere in the world. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are countries that are much more progressive, but the U.S. is still dealing with the same issues. So the idea of a localized effort, a chapter, a sister society, being able to work on it based upon that culture, that community is important. I know that Lenny from Asia was one of your guests last year in your conference, and we're actually doing an educational session next week with all of the sister societies in Asia, where I'm going to talk to them about now how do you build the network and how do you build your own personal strategic influence based upon where you are. So I just wanted to go off gender here a little bit and excuse me, and say to you, I know you have your conference coming up in October, and I don't know if it's going to end up being virtual, but please put me on the list. I would love to, come in virtually, participate, and, say hello to my friends, okay? So as you plan it, think of me.
And I know we had hoped, I remember having had a conversation with you before, we had hoped that you'll probably attend this year's session and particularly then explain all the good stuff that is happening. Even in Asia, I'm always amazed by the manner in which Nelly has done things to build the sister society and turning them into entrepreneur groups. Because that brings sustainability. When you come to the virtual, we are still going back and forth in terms of debating. The pandemic has made it really difficult to have face-to-face engagement. I know we have the feel in the continent that things are better. I don't know if the continent, we are also at times too hopeful but we have the hope that things are getting better. We've looked at various ways of doing virtual engagements like a Congress, but we realize that the infrastructure development across the continent is relatively different from country to country. You may find the stronger countries, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, that are relatively stronger or better, having better infrastructure, may benefit from such a meeting, but others might struggle. So this being new, what we might end up just having is a virtual General Assembly as a starting point. But what we are also doing, we are trying to do lots of webinar series to see how then we can either scale this up into a different level. On one hand, for me, I must say that there's a growing number of financial institutions, just like ourselves, that are rethinking the way they conduct the governance structure, particularly the General Assembly. The irony again is not most countries are accepting the virtual General Assembly. Either the feel is we will not get what needs to be received, but for me, I feel it's a huge, huge opportunity in the sense that it will make the leadership and the credit union provide the right information before the General Assembly. I attended the World Council General Assembly last month, and clearly the information that was needed in the agenda was there and it was well covered. So it will help us kind of focus. So that's an advantage that comes with this, that we are able to reorganize our governance structure.
I find all of this very important because, as we know, in the U.S., we had to pivot very significantly, and with the shutdowns and with the stay-at-home orders and so on. So as a company, my focus is board advisory and working with CEOs and strategic planning and governance, modernizing board governance. And so we had to pivot very quickly to a virtual model. So over the last 5 months, we've refined that, and we now do what I call a hybrid, where we have some pre-recordings, then we have some in live, and then we have some that are entertainment. But when we took one of our biggest challenges was with our underground collision, because when you get together as a group, people talk privately and they may have those, water cooler kind of conversations or back office conversations. And we said, how do you transfer our vulnerable conversations to a virtual forum? And what we found was that our special relationships with people, that people want a voice. And one of the interesting things about it is you and I have seen each other on and off for, numerous years. But when was the last time we were able to sit down for 30 minutes and just talk like we're doing right now? And so virtual can enhance that communication to where we can have, less noise around us and more focus. So what I'm looking for our strategic planning coming up now in the fall is we're going to do that. We're going to pre-record presentations that we would normally have somebody do in person. And then we're going to take that presentation, go off screen, and have everybody's faces there so that we're talking to each other. So I think the biggest growth that we're going to have as we move forward is to not be so dependent upon the presentation materials. Here's this slide, here's this slide, and instead have people prepare with the slides and then be there to talk in person and to talk about it and to express themselves. So I think that, at this point, Americans are restricted from even leaving our country because of the fact that we don't have a better handle on what's taking place within our country with the pandemic. So travel for me, you will laugh because I'm with Mike much more than we have been, because we used to both of us travel. So
Yeah, I know.
yeah, but from the standpoint of me making the offer, I'd love to, maybe record something and then open it up for everybody to talk and to talk about our mission, because we just added Japan in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to have 25 sister societies throughout Asia by year end. And that's significant. And I think your efforts in Africa are exploding at somewhat the same level with your leadership there.
Actually, I like what you mentioned about. I know it goes. You've brought in the issue of equality still, which is still more of inclusivity, because our credit union model is about inclusivity.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether it's gender, the youth, but how do people feel included? I like the idea of having the virtual sessions and being pre-recorded. I congratulated Nelly's team for having done the first virtual launch, and for me, it's something that we can pick it up with you. Probably it's the best time if this happens this particular year. In regard to the staffing, the back office team, I know we might not be there yet in terms of, I know there are other credit unions that are doing well, but there's a struggle of credit unions that if you're told to go work at home, how do you work at home from back office? You must be having a very good infrastructure. You must be having a very good IT infrastructure. Without that, then there's no way you can log into a system to be able to help other members. I'm seeing the commercial banks, people are doing that, but the huge challenge for us, and again, it's more of an opportunity for the CEOs and the managers in Africa to try and look at this. What is a working partner for our employees in the credit union system in the continent? Do we
Well, I
really
know
need?
that one of your the initiatives with World Council is Everyone Deserves Digital, and you're absolutely right. It's great to have virtual learning, in the United States right now, but not everybody has internet. Not everybody has an access to a computer. So there's so many key issues that we're going to be wrestling with, and it's one that I'm getting back to the underground. It's one that I'm talking to the credit union leaders about. Is in the past we have helped build infrastructure with our consumers, our members, and is there a role that we could be playing in making laptops available, iPads available, doing deals with our major corporate sponsors to see if we can support the credit union movement? Because I do see a digital divide, and it's starting to widen. So when we talk about some of the things we talked about here, as we go more virtual, how do we keep our mission alive, George? How do we keep that connection? Can we do it virtually, or does that have to be in person?
I'm one person. This program that we also got it through American system, the National Credit Union Foundation, the Development Educators Program. One of the things that we normally say in the program is the mission for the credit union will never change. It doesn't matter how many years it takes. So even when we do technology, we have disruption, this should not change. So to explain that, I will start by saying that before COVID-19, there were a couple of countries in the continent that were already, the economies were being supported in a digitalized manner. I could mention Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, Ghana, and just a couple of those. There were few. And the economies had started surviving on digital payments. We were doing e-commerce, commerce via the internet, logistics, any electronic payments, to the extent that you either were making online payments or using mobile payments. And the irony again in the continent, most of the payments has been done through mobile payments, which is stronger than this other side. So we need to have that, build an infrastructure that will enable us continuously have that touch. I'll say our mission then doesn't change even with the technology. I'll give an example, for instance. Today, we have other circles like the Kenya Police Circle that has invested in a huge infrastructure. They're able to pay their members through the system in whatever place that they are in, whatever amount, the process of applying. In fact, their members tend to be happier than the time that they were doing manual engagement. But maybe what we need to do is to see that we introduce products and services that are in line with technology. I'm concerned if we don't adapt technology in the continent where majority of the people are young, then we'll be in problems. That's why I say we can do the balance of the technological absorption, but at the same time ensuring that we stick to our mission by educating people, having programs online that educate people the difference between a credit union and any other financial facility. Because if they don't see that difference, then it will be a challenge. The best way for them to see the differences is our credit unions run in an efficient manner. When they apply for financial facility, do they able to get the financial facility? Do they feel the credit union leadership is inclusive or exclusive? Do they feel it is for a certain age group or for men or only for this group? Do they feel credit union are mismanaged? If there are those things that stain the credit union, then that will affect our ability to stick to our mission. The other challenge that I might be concerned with as the CEO of the continental body is a credit union that will then feel our focus is just to provide financial facility. So if they miss that, they start charging or focusing on profit more than serving the members. And the moment their focus is about profitability, they will do certain things, introduce products and services that are not necessarily empowering the members or making the members' life better, but to improve the kit within the credit union. That should be probably the concern, but we need that balance.
And I think you're right. I think it is a balance. And I think what we're dealing with right now is the idea that we're being forced to use digital more, but we have a digital divide where not everyone has digital. So the question is, what role can we play? And if we do step in and we bring people with us on this journey, then chances are they'll see the credit union difference. So it's like a window of opportunity based upon what's happening in the world today. And I'm hoping that our credit unions, and I'm certainly challenging them to step into that and to, ensure that we're looking at our communities, our schools, the places that are most vulnerable right now, and saying we need to give them access to digital. And if we do that, it's much like giving them access to any other, if you will, basic need, because in today's environment, it's a basic need to have a telephone, to have a way to communicate. So you and I tackled, social issues, and you actually spoke in the past when we were on a panel together about genocide and about some of the things happening. So as we look to the future, and you've talked to me a little bit about board governance, you've talked about what's taking place in Africa. What do you see as the key issues that are going to affect your world or our world that we need to be looking at and paying attention to?
From my end, for me, I'll say that the pandemic is giving us an opportunity to do things differently. I know it is a huge challenge. It has an adverse effect, but it's making us to rethink. For instance, one of the things that we normally say in the content, we see lots of financial distribution, which is dividend, huge dividends being paid in the continent. And the credit unions that are paying those huge dividends have very low capital base.
Yeah.
So they're struggling to get the balance of educating their members, and the leaders are also scared to tell the members that dividend is good, yes, but we need to focus on service delivery. We need to ensure that we are financially stable. We need to see that when the regulators say we need an X amount of capital base, either core capital or institution capital, either we work toward doubling it up. I know this might not be a problem in US or in the Western world, but the dividend issue is a big problem. And we hope with the COVID, it's going to start correct itself. It's something we've been talking about it, that credit unions should either focus on building capital to the extent that when a member comes to the credit union to ask for financial facility like mortgage, they get it. They don't wait because there is no funds, because we've distributed dividend.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the big approach, what then we need to think through on my thinking that maybe apply also to US and other parts of the world is COVID-19 is a disruptor, but there could be a bigger disruptor coming than COVID-19. That you can almost tell. There could be a much bigger disruptor than COVID-19. In the continent, it could be a disruption maybe that is on the generational change, because our continent today, the median age is 18 years of age. So that means a continent of 1.3 billion people, 650 million or so are below the age of 18.
Wow.
So that's a big number. And the same also will apply to US, a disruption like generational change. I mentioned that when I attend those bigger forums, the World Council Forum, GAC, GSC, you could tell that we need that kind of engagement. And thanks to engagement like the Underground Coalition, trying to bring people of different ages, people of different, just bringing diversity to the group. So the thinking for me is, while we are developing our policies, let us start building capital that there could be a bigger disruptor coming.
Mm-hmm.
It may not happen today, tomorrow, because for me, I'm looking at COVID-19 as something which it's already gone. It's still there, but I'm in my mind as an executive person, I'm seeing we should be thinking about what will happen in the next 10 years. The other thing that I'm concerned with, are we living our mission? I'll ask both, be it Africa, be it America, be it any part of the world, let's live to the mission of the credit union. World Council uses people helping people. In East Africa, they like using the word Arabe. When somebody's sick, people just come together not quickly to support. You being a human being, our human nature is such that human beings are meant to support each other. You find however good you are on something, somebody supported you. However good you are, somebody somewhere supported you. So if we are to live with our mission of people helping people, uplifting the lives of people, then we'll play a key role in those SDGs that have been established by the UN, the 17. Lastly, for me, again, when I look big into that picture, is, are we cooperating or we are competing? And it's not only in Africa. It could be also in America. Having seen credit union in US, I know we are cooperating, But perhaps we need to lower the level of competition amongst ourselves and increase the level of cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
I say so because in the thinking is even the weaker person can become strong when we are united. The weakest person, the weakest credit union can become strong to provide and support the mission of the credit union if they're united in a group. You know, there's a gap here, you support each other on the other side. Alone, we can do so little, but we can do so much when we are together. That's the kind of thing that for me, I see as a way of helping us reflect our mission and our purpose of credit union empowering people, people helping people.
People helping people to help themselves. It's like I believe strongly that it does take a village, that none of us are able to do this without the people in our lives, and the people in our lives needs to expand so that we understand the road everyone's on, the path people are on. And so I just I treasure what you said, and I want to add a couple thoughts. When you talk about cooperation, I think we also have to drive vulnerable collaboration. In other words, we can't just talk about the things that we're comfortable with. We have to talk about the things that we're not comfortable with that make us a little bit like, whoa, where's this going? And one of the opportunities that we have is to say, we have these conversations and they seem pretty grand, like let's change the world, let's make a difference. The reality is that if we can have the conversation, there are people among us that'll put those ideas into action, that they will be able to say, okay, what are some steps to get there? And no, I'm not a Pollyanna. No, I don't. I think I want to have aspirations to make progress. And I understand that some of that requires me being uncomfortable. And I think we've gone through social injustice. We've had murders, we've had sickness, we've had the children not being able to go to school. And when you talk about disruption, it's been a pandemic, and now they're talking about the flu season. So there's so many things that we have to look at and continue to drive our message. And so, do I want to have 100% virtual? Absolutely not. Do I want to have a silent voice because of the lack of virtual? Then, that's where I come in, that we've got to stand up for it and use the tools we have. They may not be as effective, but let's get the tools to them. And I really want to advocate for our children right now across all of the world. That's astounding to me, what you said about the average age. How critical is a YP program for you? How critical is the World Council connecting kids around the world? But I do think, and our team is heavily involved. Brandy Stankovic is heavily involved, and Zach. And yesterday, I talked to the foundation. So we're looking at how do we collectively tell that story even more. So, so this is wonderful. I think we're on common tracks. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything about you. So let's stay in touch.
Thank you, Sue. I really appreciate that. Some of these key initiatives, like the Sister Society, the YCAP engagement, the DEs, are the things that help us tell our story in a different way. Are things that make people feel that the credit union is unique. And we are not just there to provide financial services, but we are there to support the vulnerable, because today, myself and you might be privileged to have 3 meals in a day. The next two months, we are not able to have that because circumstances have changed. So for me, there's this power that we have through initiatives that we are all working together. And I thank you for for working with ACOSCA. I know we'll continue engaging to see that we reach out to as many people as possible in an inclusive manner. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.